When I met Kylie, we were both living in Georgia. I was working at a university with students in recovery, and she reached out to see what she would need to do to enroll in college. There were a few things about her that struck me immediately. Her deep red hair and that she was walking with the use of prosthetics. I told myself to stay focused on her eyes, and they were a bluish green. As we met in my office, her arms waved passionately while she told me about her dreams and goals for going back to school. She was so focused, and her unguarded expressions filled the room, but the question of what happened to her lingered in my mind. I gave her a list of next steps and then walked her over to the student lounge so she could check it out. It was empty and her eagerness rose as she explored. My curiosity interrupted and I asked, "Would you mind telling me your story?" "Sure," she said, smiling, and took a seat. For the next several minutes, she told me about her journey in recovery, from active addiction to getting sober and a tragic accident she experienced in early recovery that not only threatened her sobriety, but her life. When she was done, I remember telling her with tears in my eyes that I was going to help share her story with the world one day. Now, almost 3 years later, I find myself flying from Denver, Colorado, which is where I live now, to Texas to make good on my word. Kylie moved back to her home state a few months after we met. We collide again at the baggage claim. Her hair is now a bright blonde, and I wonder what else has changed. We walk to a big pickup truck where her husband is waiting for us. They married about a year prior. His name is Stefan. He steps out of the car to greet me with a hug. He's so in love with his wife. His hazel eyes light up whenever he looks at her, and his hand always seems to find hers while we explore the city together. A few hours later, we make it to my hotel for the interview. And as she shares, I am again stunned by her level of acceptance, courage, and unapologetic faith. I learned new lessons, but none more than this: that sometimes your greatest joy comes through the experience of your greatest pain. You're listening to Beauty in the Grit, and I'm your host, Ariel Britt. Reap what you need.
The only life that was normal to me was the party scene. My first party was when I was 12, and I drank and I did drugs. And 13 years later, when it came time for me to get sober, I had no idea what that would look like. My entire adolescence and early adult life was filled with darkness. I couldn't seem to wrap my mind around any type of life that was worth living sober. I didn't expect to stay sober. In fact, I had a plan that I would do X, Y, and Z to get my family off my back, but I didn't ever think that I would stay sober. I had a backup plan. I'll do this for this amount of time, and then I'll do what I want, use drugs once a week to keep my figure, organize my bedroom, because normal people do that, right? No, they don't. So I get sober, and for the first time since I was 11 years old, was truly happy. I had this sense of freedom that I couldn't get from a drink. I couldn't get from a drug. I looked good. I felt good. I was making connections with people, real connections, wanting to know who they are, not wanting to befriend them for what they could give me or what I could get out of them. And I also came to a place where I trusted women. And in my addiction, I did not trust women. They would steal your makeup, your clothes, and your boyfriend. Going from living out of your car to a sober living house with 15 other women, that is a huge lifestyle change. And had I not been in a place of learning, being teachable, I don't think that I would have made it. For the first time in a long, long time, I felt safe. I felt wanted and needed and loved. And this was only just the beginning. I'm 109 days sober. It's 105 in Texas that day. No clouds in the sky. I got off work early, my little car hop job. I'm like, let's go to the river, guys. So we know of this place, and it's got a really beautiful, nice, cold spring where just the hot day just melts away. And there's a 12-foot cliff with a rope swing, and then there's a 50-foot cliff. One of the people who were out there were saying, like, I want to see some girls jump off there. I'm like, I'll go. So I make the hike up there, and I throw my flip-flops into the water, and I see how high up I am. And I start to back up, and I back up a little bit, and then I start to run, and mid-step, I realize, number one, I didn't have momentum to make it to the water. So I instinctively tried to stop myself from going over. And then 1, 2, 3, and I hit rocks and tree limbs, feet first. And it sounded like a huge tree branch just broke. And I yelled out some obscenities, and I said, please call for help, call 911, call my mom. And everyone is in shock. Nobody's moving. And I'm dying. Stay awake, stay awake. You're almost there. Help is coming. Help is here. Just stay awake. I was out there for an hour and 15 minutes by the time the helicopter arrived. I had to have a trach put in, chest tube placed to drain the blood from my lungs. Fever for 31 days, 13 blood transfusions, 13 surgeries back to back. I couldn't see past the pain. When I woke up from a coma about 45 days after the accident, my wrist was healed, my pelvis was healed. I had no idea who I was going to be. No idea. I remember laughing when I had my legs unwrapped. I was laughing hysterically because they had shrunk so small that they were just bones. I was in a lot of denial. I was in a lot of fear. I did not know how to deal with the wreckage that was my new life. And about 2 weeks after I woke up, the nurse comes in and he's giving me my medication. And at that moment, God opened up a window of clarity. He said, all right, I've got to change your fentanyl patch. I've got to give you your Dilaudid, and here's your methadone. Don't forget about the liquid Lortab, and here's some stool softener. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm a drug addict. I can't be on all this or I'll never get off. I wanted my life back. So I went against medical advice, and I detoxed from all of those medications. My bones hurt from the inside out. Every part of my body was aching. The hair on my body, my skin, my muscles, my nerves, my bones. And it was probably the most painful detox I'd experienced, even in addiction. Those 3 months of sobriety that I lived until my accident were the best 3 months of my entire life. And I would do anything to get that life back. I'm in the hospital for about 5.5 months. I leave in a wheelchair, and I went back to sober living because at this point, I still did not know how to live sober. I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to budget money. I didn't know how to stay sober day to day. And I faced everything head on. There were days when I'd be sitting out on the porch and all the girls would come in, change into their bathing suits and go to the river and go to the mall and go have milkshakes and doing all these fun things that we could now do because we're sober. And I felt left out. I felt like a burden at times. But God just kept sending women to my sober house that needed help. We talked about things that upset them. We talked about things they'd been through, things we could do to help change their future and not keep making these mistakes. However God wanted to use me, I was clay in his hands. I got my leg braces when I was about 1.5 years sober. I finally could walk. Not very well, but I could. and I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't run. I couldn't jump. I definitely couldn't work out. I couldn't walk up and down stairs. My life was severely limited by the fact that I still had legs. And I honestly don't know why I held on to my legs for so long. They no longer served me. They were never going to work again. And I was holding on to this old idea that because it was part of my body and I was healing from the inside out, that maybe they would work one day. So I found a lot of freedom in being a bilateral amputee at 3 years sober. Since having both legs amputated, I can do everything. I can grocery shop, I can take the groceries in, I can cook dinner and clean it up. I can go to the gym, I can do CrossFit, which is something I never thought that I could do. I didn't even think that I could work out, period. The greatest thing about my life today, though, is that I know who I am. I know who I am because of God and in God, and He's given me a husband.
One evening, I decided to go to church. I've been going to a church in Bernie, Texas, and I thought I'm going to try this other church out, one that I've never been to before in Kerrville, and there's a lot of churches in Kerrville. So I go that morning, and then I see Kylie, and it was electric, like nothing I've really ever experienced. This sounds crazy saying it, but immediately it was like, this is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with.
Not one time has He made me feel weird about my internal injuries. He will never know what it's like to feel my feet touch His as we lay in bed at night, and He doesn't need to. He loves me 100% because of what God has done in me and through me, and He gave me the most wonderful gift of a baby boy who is 7 months old.
I love you so much.
His name is Cameron. This life, I never dreamed possible. I did not ever think that I would not have my legs, or that I would be a mom or a wife. I didn't think that I could hold down a job. I didn't think these things were possible for me, but they are, and I have them, and I will do anything to keep them. I think it's important for people to know that no matter your circumstance, no matter your situation, if you have money in the bank, if you don't, if you have both legs or no legs, you can get sober and stay sober. You can get well and stay well, no matter what.
This episode of Beauty and the Grit was produced by me, Ariel Britt, mixed and sound designed by Jason Patton. Kat Jaffe was the story editor. This season is funded by Patreon. A special thank you to them and everyone at House of Pod. To Kylie and Stefan, thank you for sharing your truth. And to the listeners, your support is very much appreciated. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Until next time, and as always, reap what you need.